I mean, I think any art that is successful in any to any degree um, evokes some kind of.
So, welcome to the show, Ivan Weiss.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, what got you into photography in the first place?
Well, I started when I was a kid. My dad was a photographer, so I think when you grow up around a certain thing, in my case, photography, it's just there. It's just part of life. You don't really question it. I imagine it's the same. People who follow a kind of family profession into, I don't know, medicine or business or whatever. Um, so as a kid, I didn't question it. It was just there, and I learnt the basics of analog photography from my dad when I was sort of 7, 8 years old. Um, the first time there was an element of choice about it for me was when I was 16 and I was choosing my A levels, and the careers advisors, in their wisdom, said to me, "No, no, you're clever, so don't do photography. Do something academic." So I dropped photography, took some academic A levels, which I didn't finish because I wasn't interested or motivated. So I dropped out with no qualifications. Um, and then came back to photography as a profession in my mid 30s, really. So quite a long gap.
Do you regret dropping photography at 16 and picking it up in mid 30s? Because that seems like a long gap to go,
Well, I mean, in all honesty, no, I don't regret it. I think realistically, if I had gone back to photography maybe 2 or 3 years earlier than I actually did, that may have been beneficial. There was a period, I had a steady job. I'd been with a company for 15 years. So deciding to leave that and go into full-time photography was a fairly big decision that I probably procrastinated on a little bit longer than maybe I should have. Um, but I definitely think that if I'd gone into photography straight away, at 16, A levels, and then into the industry, I would have had a very different career. So no regrets about it. I do think it's a shame that there was that attitude, and I think that attitude still persists to some extent. That if you have, if you're smart, then you shouldn't do something practical or artistic. I think that's a terrible attitude that gets propagated, and it's much more important that people, who knows, if you're 16 years old, who knows what's going to happen in the next 30 years of your life in terms of society, technology, opportunities, etc., etc. So if a kid at 16 says they want to do photography, I think they should be encouraged to do it. But for me personally, no regrets. It's worked out fine. The things that I did in between times inform my approach to photography, and perhaps I wouldn't have gone into portrait photography if I'd started at 16. Maybe I would have found, fashion photography to be more, or music photography or something to be more kind of appealing to a younger mindset.
know what you mean when you say about there shouldn't, if you're smart, you shouldn't do something creative. Because for some odd reason, Taylor Swift came into my mind because she's often credited. Yeah, I know, but she's often credited as, well, yeah, she's a singer. She can. I don't know whether she has music or not, but she's top of the charts, but top of her industry. But she's very business minded, and
Uh-huh.
that's what's helped her. So I can
Right.
understand. I can understand why you would say, yeah, maybe if they're smart, don't do creative when you should, because maybe that could help you in some way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it comes down to, you are most likely to succeed in the thing that you find interesting, right? Um, within reason, like if I find basketball to be really interesting, but I'm 4'11", maybe I'm setting myself up for a greater challenge than is necessary in that case. But it tends to be, especially at a young age, you get interested in things because you have a small degree of success in them. I started in photography, and I had the advantage that my dad was there, and I had access to all of the equipment and the knowledge and all the rest of it. So I probably, for a 16-year-old, was fairly good at it compared to somebody who was just coming at photography from the idea of that looks cool, I want to try it, but I've got no experience or background. Um, so yeah, had I gone into it, probably would have been successful. But instead, I took these academic subjects that I wasn't interested in, and ultimately left with no qualifications at all. So I don't think that really did anyone any favors. It didn't look good for the school on their league table, that I dropped out without finishing. And on my CV, it doesn't look particularly impressive either. But no regrets. But
Did you always do portrait photography when you were young, or did you naturally grow into that?
that was definitely a later on kind of thing. Which that was informed by the experiences that I had in the meantime. Um, like most photographers, I tried a bit of everything at various points, and then because in my previous career I'd gone into I worked in media post production, and I'd gone into management and found that I quite liked working with people, which was a bit of a revelation for me because I thought I was an introvert and I just wanted to be, sat at my computer with my headphones on and not deal with people. Um, but the aspect of dealing with people from the point of view of being a manager, helping them to kind of develop and achieve their goals, so the kind of coaching aspect of it, that crosses over into portrait photography really quite directly. Somebody comes into the studio here, they have an outcome that they want to achieve. They want me to help them achieve that outcome, and that's a really satisfying aspect of it. Um, on top of that, you know, it's sort of almost cheating in a way. If you're a landscape photographer, you have to go out and find new landscapes or different ways of photographing the same landscape. Whereas as a portrait photographer, I get a new person walks into the studio every day. So that's my raw material is different every day just by the very nature of how it works. Um, so each session is different because it's a different subject.
Sounds like you get fresh material, maybe the wrong words, but you get new people to work with by proxy of what you do, as opposed if I was to go to the same beach every day for a
Yes.
month. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not to say that there's anything, again, it comes down to what you enjoy, right? So somebody who does enjoy photographing the same bit of coastline every day in different weather conditions, different times of day, different lights, different seasons, all of that stuff, I totally see why that would be enjoyable and rewarding, and actually appreciating those different nuances of how it appears in the different conditions. Um, just that's not for me.
What is it about portrait photography that just clicks for you instead of, to use your example, landscape photography?
I mean, I think any art that is successful in any degree um, evokes some kind of emotional response in the viewer, and absolutely that can be done with a landscape. But I think with a portrait, it's more direct. There's nothing we find more fascinating as humans than looking at other humans. And I suppose it's always that sort of juxtaposition of looking at the things in them that we feel are the same as us, and the things in them that we feel are different from us. So sort of, seeing somebody from a different culture or different part of society, and there's the kind of the exotic. Oh, right, their life is different from mine, but there's also the familiar of, but on this level, we're fundamentally the same. Or I understand that, I recognize that look in his eyes. I've felt like that. So yeah, I think it's probably the most direct and readily available subject matter for creating that emotional response in a viewer. At least, for me.
Yeah, because you do a lot of headshot photography with actors, and those get selected by the casting directors. How do you create those headshots where the casting director then looks at the photo, looks at the person they might hire, and go, that's the one, or that's the person I want to hire because of the emotions of how they're being portrayed and expressing themselves through the photo?
I mean, it's that same thing. If you don't create an emotional response with the picture, next, right? There has to be something that people connect to. Casting directors are humans, therefore they have human emotional responses to things. They're no different from non-casting directors in that respect. The reasons why they're looking at a bunch of pictures are different. They have an aim, an objective that's different to mine, for example. But there's still that, you can't override it. It's quite deep in our psychology that when we look at a face, we have reactions to it. And if a picture provokes a reaction, then job done. What that reaction is and whether it's appropriate to the particular role or project that the casting director is working on, how could I possibly know that? I take a picture today that may be used for a year, 2 years, and may be submitted for a whole range of different projects and roles, some of which, for some of which it may be appropriate, and for some of which it may not. But I can't possibly know that ahead of time. So my job is to work with the actor to create the picture that has some kind of emotional resonance, and then it's the job of the actor or the actor's agent to submit the appropriate picture to the appropriate casting director for the appropriate role. So that's a bit that I'm not involved in.
When you meet, because like you said, you need to take the picture so it gets sent off for that appropriate role. When you meet your clients and your actors, how do you break the ice essentially to get them comfortable with you? Because I know you've got a few tools and tricks for doing that.
Uh-huh.
And what are those tools and tricks?
I mean, this is no great secret, right? How do you break the ice with a person? Actors are humans too. They respond in the same way as most humans. You look for something that connects you, ask them to talk about something that they're interested in. If you ask somebody a question about something in which they have a degree of interest and expertise, they're going to feel confident. If you ask them a question about something, that they don't know anything about, that then they're going to feel less confident, and they'll feel unsure and like they're being tested. So yeah, look for things where you have a connection, and it can be the most obvious banal things, like, yeah, like, I like those shoes. Are they from, or, oh, I know somebody's got those in a different color, whatever. It's a point of connection. And, then they'll probably say, oh, these, yeah, I got them on special offer, or actually, they really hurt my heels, or whatever. And you're straight in, right? There's a connection, and they're telling you something about their life and their experience straight away. And away you go, rinse and repeat.
So when you take the photos and you've broken that connection, broken the ice with the person, what emotions and expressions are you looking for the actors to act for the photos, and how much do language, or how much does body language and clothes affect the outcome of a
Uh,
picture? Because I know you've got a policy of bring as big of a wardrobe as you can, but clothes do make people think you're X, you're Y, you're C, and so on.
yes. So I mean, I like to leave it very open. I don't, I don't go in thinking, okay, in this shot, I want you to look this way, and in this shot, I want you to look this way. It's much more about provoking genuine reactions to stimuli, capturing them, and then after the fact, as we're looking through, we can say, okay, in this shot, you look really confident. In this shot, you look, you know, um, really very vulnerable, scared, whatever. Um, and then matching those things up with the lighting, the background, and the wardrobe. So a shot of somebody looking really confident in their facial expression, but if the camera is coming in from a high angle and the lighting suggests a much more kind of diminished character, that possibly won't work because there's a mismatch. On the other hand, sometimes that mismatch actually makes the shot really interesting, right? Like an extreme example. I went to see the Rankin exhibition of the shots that he did for Dazed magazine back in the 90s, and there's a shot of a baby with a real kind of aggressive expression, right? So the juxtaposition makes that makes that shot work in a way that your normal shot of a baby looking cute and vulnerable is very passe. So sometimes the mismatch is the thing, other times you want everything to line up. So similarly, if somebody is looking very kind of commanding and the camera's at a low angle and they're wearing a suit with shoulder pads and everything's all properly put together, that suggests a level of like professional success. This person is a lawyer, a business person, these kind of things. um, if I've put that on a background that's baby pink, okay, then again we have a mismatch. So yeah, it's through sort of play, experimentation that we kind of work those things out. And for some actors, it's not going to be appropriate. Those are not the roles that they go up for. Um, in other cases, sometimes it's through that play and experimentation that they discover, actually, yeah, I can do that. I can see myself doing that. Um, and I think, yeah, it's like, I don't know if you play music, but it's like being in a jam session, right? There are certain things that are always going to work, but that's not the point of the jam session. You go in and you try some stuff, and oh, actually, that didn't think that was going to work, but that does, and you go on and develop that idea. And other things that you try it and you go, okay, we don't need to tell anyone we tried that. We'll just park that and not play that one again. Um, but that's how you grow and develop and discover new things.
It's trial and error, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What would you say makes a good portrait photograph?
A good portrait photograph. Well, it's that same thing that I said before. If you look at it and you have an emotional reaction to it, then it's succeeded in its job. What the emotional reaction should be, that comes down to what the photographer wants to portray, how the subject wants to be seen, and what the viewer finds interesting or intriguing to experience as a reaction. Sometimes it's really comforting to see something very familiar, and sometimes it's really boring to see something familiar, and I want to be challenged. As a viewer, as a consumer, a lot of that is just to do with how I'm, the mental state that I'm in the moment that I experience the picture. So I don't think that's something that should be particularly present for the photographer or the sitter at the time that the picture is made. That said, obviously there are certain types of portraiture or certain uses of portraiture. If we're making a picture for the cover art for an album, or the poster for a movie, we know the specific type of reaction that we want to provoke in the viewer, so we have to kind of bear that in mind at the time of creation. But for the most part, for the work that I do, we don't have the specific use in mind to begin with. That kind of flows as a consequence from what we've created, and within a session, we're going to create a whole range of different moods and atmospheres that are going to fit different uses.
What would your ideal outcome for a portrait photograph look like if you're trying to? Because, like you said, it depends what mood you're in and the type of range of emotions and what you're trying to convey. But if you, not pitch perfect, but like an ideal you could achieve, where you could go, that I could die happy if I took this one, sort of thing.
um, I mean, that's very difficult to put my finger on. I think. I mean, I have a sort of personal rule. I Every day I have to make a picture that gives me that reaction. I'm like, okay, I have job satisfaction for today. A picture that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and go, I'm going to go back and have another look at that. That's a really nice picture, or not necessarily nice. It might be it might be interesting for reasons other than being nice. But you see what I mean. A picture that I'm excited to see again, and that can be as varied as the people that come into the studio. Um, you know, it can be that the person I've photographed is particularly beautiful and the picture shows them as particularly beautiful. It can be that the person is particularly complex and somehow the picture shows that complexity. It might be both of those things at the same time, which is, that's even better, you know. Um, but yeah, it's just that there's something about the picture that is interesting for some reason, and it doesn't really matter what that reason is. And I will keep coming back to look at that picture because it gives me some kind of satisfaction to see it. Yeah, as I say, as long as I make one picture like that every day, I'm happy,
You've got
content.
content.
Let's not say happy. I'm not necessarily happy.
You've got this. I've written it down. You've got this idea with creatives and business, that there's things that you do that you have to do to pay the rent, and there's things that you do as an artist that you wouldn't expect to be paid for. And I wanted to ask you, I know you don't like that stance. A, why? And B, where's this come from? Is it a philosophical one, or is that a practical and experienced one where you've seen it from other people and you've come to that conclusion?
Well, it's definitely philosophical, but I think my philosophy comes from practical experience. I work out my philosophy based on experience. I dislike that attitude because it undervalues creativity, and creativity is the most valuable thing that we have. So to start from a position of saying you're going to get paid more for doing something that's not creative, that's just logically wrong. It's it's not true, and it's not logical. Some of some of the highest paid people in society are people that are doing creative things. Certainly not all of them. Um, we as a society place huge value on the arts. We don't think we do, and we're all kind of happy, or we all accepting of the idea of the starving artist, the aspiring actor. An actor has to have 5 side jobs to fund their acting. Um, but in reality, you take away the arts, what, like, people would go crazy. Like, what? No television shows, no music, no computer games, no interesting content on social media. What would people do with themselves if there were no artists and creators? And that's just sort of, I'm just talking pop culture there. Like, no galleries, no paintings, no statues, no architecture, no interior design. Like, obviously, obviously, it would be terrible. Um, so, if these things are important to us, which we can obviously see that they are, they therefore have value. Things that have value have an exchange value. The tokens that we use to denote exchange value are money. Therefore, you should get paid to do things that have value. Your creativity has value. There you go.
Would you also say this is something that I heard someone else say that if you really want to do something, unless you have to, for whatever reason, like financially, you should do the main thing. So, like you said, with like the actors got like 5 jobs, shouldn't they just go straight into acting as their career because then they can develop the skill to become a better actor instead of sidelining it with 5 jobs?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a tension. I think the important thing, if you work in a creative job, and I don't mean if you work in a creative industry, I mean if you actually do a creative job, you have to be able to recognize when you are heading in the right direction and when not. So, for me to do, I don't know, let's say I've got a gas bill to pay on Friday, and on Thursday somebody offers me £400 to take some pictures of their pet dog. I'm not a pet photographer. I don't have anything else booked on Thursday. So doing that job is not taking me off of my path. It's not sending me on a distraction. It's not the work that I really want to do. True. But it's solving the problem of paying the gas bill on Friday, putting some money in my pocket so that I can, keep going on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, pursuing the path that I'm on. If instead somebody's offering me a full-time job that takes care of my rent and bills, but leaves me no time to continue building the creative job that I want for myself, then that's a distraction. That's taking me off the path, and ultimately is going to lead to frustration, dissatisfaction, possibly a pivot at some point in the future, or possibly just one of those situations where you get to retirement and say, I wish I hadn't taken that job. I wish I'd given it a go. And that's fundamentally the decision. So it's very easy to get distracted by somebody offering to pay you to do something, because we all need money. But you have to ask yourself that question: Is it taking me off of the path that I want to be on, or is it allowing me to continue on the path that I want to be on? If it's the second, go ahead and do it. It's not a problem. If it's the first, ideally don't do it. Obviously, if the situation is such that you have no choice, then you have no choice. But yeah, it's it's not that difficult a thing to work through on an intellectual level. You just have to be clear about what it is you want to do and why you want to do it, and then everything else becomes easy, or rather, it becomes simple as a decision. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy, because actually making that a reality requires hard work and discipline and all of those things. But anything that anyone's proposing to pay you for probably requires some degree of hard work and discipline. It's not easy to do a job if you don't like it. So try and do the job that you do like. It's still not going to be easy, but probably a little bit easier to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and do something you're excited about than something you're not.
I understand what you mean. It's being, yes, don't throw your path off completely off the road, but be practical about it. So if you have to go get that full-time job to do that creative thing, then do, if you can avoid it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I also understand what you mean by find something that you enjoy doing, because then that's what's going to get you up in the morning. Because when I first started this podcast, I'll be honest, speaking entirely for me, I've been getting up, not as an ego thing, just getting up because I overall enjoy doing the podcast. That's a lot better than doing something that I'm just like, I'll just have another 2 hours and then get back to it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like the most difficult things that I've done in my professional life have involved bits of, a job that I didn't enjoy, and the particular bits of the job that were least fulfilling, and having to, sit through having to stay awake in a meeting, the outcome of which I had no investment in, is far, far more difficult than staying up to 4 o'clock in the morning to finish post-production because I've got a deadline. Both of them are difficult, but I know which one I'd rather do.
It's, not pick the poison, but pick the, yeah, it's pretty much like pick which one you want.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, not to be sort of morbid about it, but I forget where the quote comes from, but it was, find what you love and let it kill you. It's a little bit sort of stoic in its approach. Ultimately you're going to die. Ultimately, the job that you do is going to do for you. At some point, you're going to get to 70, 80 years old, and the fact that you've sat at a desk all your working life is going to show you're going to have the hunchback and the mobility problems. If you've been doing a job that you love, let's say you're a ballet dancer, they have all kinds of problems at the end of their career, from the extreme physical things that they go through for being dancers. But okay, if those are the choices, if you prefer sitting at a computer, then put up with the hunchback. If you prefer dancing around on the stage, put up with the terrible knee joints and arthritis and all of those things that come with that job. There isn't, none of it's forever, none of it's perfect, all of it has a downside. So pick the upside that most appeals to you.
Do you know who Douglas Murray is?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, British journalist, I think he lives in America now. He got told a story by, I don't think it was a mentor, but just someone he knew, who said, Douglas, in life, you must choose your regrets. It sounds similar to that, doesn't it? It's like, pick which problems you'd rather have.
Yeah. I mean, if I was Douglas Murray, I think I'd have lots of regrets. But yes, not a particular fan of his. But yes, I know.
I haven't seen any of it. I just know of him. You've started mentoring. I forget which group it is. Is it
in the Headshot Crew?
Yeah, that's it. The Headshot Crew. What's your experience been like with that? Because you're essentially taking up a mentoring role slash teacher role, and you're watching other art photographers take the pictures, and in
Mhm.
that instance, you're more of like a backseat driver, aren't you? It's like I am not the one behind the
Yeah,
camera. What's
yeah.
that all like?
Well, I mean, I think it's important to understand that there's quite a different there's quite a distinction between being a mentor and being a coach and being a teacher. Um, I think naturally my personality, my style, I'm more given to mentoring rather than coaching or teaching. Um, the thing that's incredibly rewarding about it is that it's a reminder of the path and the progress that I've followed. So I think most people have this. Maybe I have it to a greater extent than average. But as soon as I learn something, that just becomes my baseline, and I sort of assume, all right, yeah, well, everyone knows that, right? I was an idiot before, but now I've worked that out. Now I can show my face in public. Now I've understood that thing, right? Um, and when you're mentoring people, you're reminded. It's like, oh, yeah, that thing is not obvious. That's not knowledge that's held by the general public. That's stuff that people work out through practice and repetition and dedicated study. Um, so when somebody asks a question and I'm able to give them an answer from my experience, yeah, it's nice because I get to feel like, oh, yeah, I'm clever. But more importantly, it's the reminder there was a time when I saw that bit of information as being the key to unlocking the next level, and therefore I should be, I suppose, grateful um, for that progress that I've made and the ability that I now have to help somebody else make that progress in their own journey. Um, when people ask me about lighting, for example, I can sum it up in about three sentences. You know, but then I think, well, actually, it's taken me 47 years to get to those three sentences. So although it is really, really simple to boil it down to that concise little bit of information, the process of distillation to get there is the journey. Um, it's the same as I suppose anything. If you're thinking about distillation, you taste a whiskey and you can say like, oh yeah, it sort of tastes a bit of honey and a bit of smoke, and then it's kind of a little bit fruity. Boom, and it's done. But it took 15 years to get there, and quite a lot of complex chemical reactions went into the making of that little shot or dram or whatever of whiskey. Um, and the process of mentoring other people reminds you of that complexity and gives you an appreciation of that complexity that I think it's useful to hold on to, because the danger of that simplification, although it's really nice and satisfying to be able to distill things down into a very concise thing, you can then start to undervalue it. Like, oh, why would they pay me to, do the lighting here? Like, I'm just literally going to switch on a light and point it in the right direction. Ah, yeah, but, it's taken me 20 years of practice to know which is the right direction. It's not that simple when you don't know. Um, so yeah, it's very satisfying from that point of view. I think if you are a coach as opposed to a mentor, that's a lot more like answering specific problems, having a specific objective. And if you're a teacher, I think that's even more about telling people these are the things that I think you should know. Whereas a mentor, it's much more the mentee, the person being mentored, comes to you with ideas and suggestions and questions, and you help them kind of work it out for themselves. So it's a bit more, uh, I suppose it's a bit more of a teamwork kind of thing rather than being the teacher where I hold all the knowledge. I'm going to tell you what you need. I'm going to design a course. That has a place as well, and is very useful and can be satisfying too. But I think being a mentor has it has a different kind of reward for me as a mentor as opposed to a coach or a teacher.
Ivan Weiss, everyone. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
IvanWeiss.London is my website. It's also my handle on pretty much every social media platform that you care to mention. So I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn predominantly, but also Facebook, X, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Vero, and probably a few more by the time this goes out because there's new ones popping up every day.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, then we've got the entire playlist here. We've also got clips here. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.